Okay, well, welcome everybody. I am coming to you today from the central coast of California. I grew up in Watsonville, California, if any of you know it, and I am staying with a group of elementary school friends from Watsonville at a place called Pajaro Dunes on the Central Coast in California, between Santa Cruz and Monterey. It's a beautiful area. The fog is lifting. It's kind of a pretty day here. So hello. So I'm seeing lots of faces that I know have been involved in youth programs for eons. So feel free to ask questions or correct my information, but I also see some new folks, and we're grateful for your support of our young leaders and our programs in District 5110. Happy to be available to you, but there are several other people here, Del Gray among them, who can answer many questions about RILA. Dan, of course, is going to talk with us about youth exchange. Evie knows everything there is to know about Interact and Rotaract. So I will try and keep it interesting and give you the information that you need about what's going on here in our district currently and what we've got planned for the coming Rotary year. So with that, I think I'll do a screen share. So Rick, so do I just click on share my screen now? Is that?
Yep, you
okay?
Should be good to go.
So I'm maybe disappearing here and sharing my screen. Okay, does that look right, everybody?
It does.
Okay. So, and how, okay. So, as you probably know, I am the Youth Services Chair for our district. I am responsible for RILA, Interact, and Youth Exchange. And also in our district, I'll give you a little Rotaract stuff too, even though technically Rotary International has taken Rotaract out of the umbrella of youth programs when they eliminated the upper age requirement for Rotaract. So they eliminated the 30-year-old upper age limit. So it's no longer considered a youth program, but we feel in our district that it's very important to keep it connected with the Interact and Youth Exchange and RILA. So how do I advance my slides? Technical expert Rick.
So you'll just do like you would normally do. So you can do your down arrow. Or in the corner of your presentation, it may
doesn't seem to be moving.
There you go.
Oh, there it went. Okay, so let's talk about RILA first. And RILA, the actual name of RILA is Rotary Youth Leadership Academy, and I'm kind of rebranding it because of my passion for RILA, and there are no restrictions on what we say about RILA. So to me, it's Rotary Young Leaders Amaze, because it's such an inspirational program both for the students and for Rotarians who sponsor them. So many of you may know that we did, the District Executive Committee in January was looking at the possibility of doing our traditional in-person camp. And the folks at the camp were unsure, we were unsure, and all of the information I was getting from other districts were telling us that we just didn't know what we would be able to do in person by June of this year. And Del can attest that putting on our in-person camp, RILA camp, requires months of preparation and work and, collecting sponsorships and working with clubs and students and all of that. And so we decided even if things had opened up by late June, we wouldn't have the upfront time to do an in-person RILA So it's been interesting for me the last year or so. I have been participating in a youth services task force through our Rotary Zones 26 and 27. And so I started talking to other Rotary districts to find out what they were doing. And I was introduced to a group of Rotarians actually out of Georgia, led by a wonderful woman with 22 years of experience. Her name is Bridget Markwood. And I heard from others that she had successfully put on at that time, at least 3 or 4 e-camps. So she has a degree in communications, but her secondary focus was on television production. So she actually had a team and the technical skills to make a virtual experience really interesting. So we decided with the executive committee's approval to approach her and see what they would charge us, see what they could offer us. And so for $300 per participant, they agreed to do everything, basically. So, and by everything, I meant they set up a custom website for us. They said that, and the website has all kinds of district-specific information about ERILA. They had a whole system already set up for online application for students. And they had, probably most importantly, an outstanding, experienced, energetic young leadership team. So they had the entire staff, I mean, they had everything. Basically, it was what I would call a turnkey program for $300 a participant. And we had some reserves in RILA, and we had not asked the district for any funds at that point to support RILA. But in working with the leadership team with Cindy and others, we decided to subsidize the cost per participant. So what we did with the clubs was we charged $100 per Rotary Club to sponsor a student, and then reserves and district funds subsidized $200 of the cost. And so we, send out the word to clubs. Some clubs had more difficulty convincing students that this would be, a great experience. But other clubs were very successful with the schools that they were working with, creating some energy and excitement. I worried because so many of our high school students are online, for long periods of time every day, how this would be received, because the schedule for RILA, so you'll see the dates there on my slide, it went from April 28th through May 2nd. So it started on a Wednesday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. So after school on Wednesday evening, it went Thursday and Friday evenings from 6 to 10 p.m. So, we're keeping students up late for 4 hours after they've gone to school all day. And then the weekend of May 1st and 2nd, which were essentially full days. So I was delighted when we got 75 high school sophomores and juniors. We opened it up to sophomores and juniors this year. And so they were willing participants, and it was, we learned a few things from this leadership consulting group that I probably will want to use next year with our traditional RILA. One of the things that they did was they did virtual orientation for students and their parents. And so in small groups of about 5 family clusters, they presented information about ERILA, what the students could expect, and what, for the parents, what their students were going to be involved in. And so that was really effective, actually. And then the next next thing that happened was the group, Leader and you, sent a retreat crate to every participant. And so every student participating got delivered by UPS a crate that had a range of goodies. It had all kinds of snacks and, fidget devices and, pencil and paper and a Ryla t-shirt and then a bunch of closed envelopes that were sealed that the students were told not to open anything that was sealed, that was going to be part of the Ryla experience. So it was a really fun way of getting people energized and excited about what was going to happen. So their curriculum, you may know that Ryla is present in every Rotary district, but the curriculum is focused on leadership, but each district decides for itself, how they're going to do that, what kind of challenges and activities, even what age group they're going to work with. So this curriculum was very interesting in that it was focused on individual assessment and personality testing, that kind of thing. And then a curriculum that focused on what they called 12 power skills, for success in school, work, and life. So there was a lot of personal exploration. We do that at our traditional Ryla, but there was more of it with this particular curriculum, which was turned out to be very interesting and exciting. So they did a really good job of combining games and challenges and making things interesting for the students. And they didn't, this was not Zoom school. This was not sitting in one place and listening to a person like me talk at them for minutes or hours. They were up and moving around, and they were interacting with team members. There were 10 color teams that were introduced to each other, and each had a counselor and facilitator. So they had an opportunity to meet other students from across our district. It was all really well done. Whoops, going back one. I'm going too quickly here. Here we go. So some of the testimonials, we were amazed, honestly. The student testimonials, these are testimonials. You might think this is about our traditional camp, but this is about the e-Ryla. So Ryla was the best thing I've done in my life by far. If you get a chance, you should go because you learn so much about yourself. Life-changing experience, a lot of fun, amazing, nothing else like it. Again, it exceeded our expectations. It was wildly successful and really, really impacted the students. One of the things that I found about Ryla, about this Ryla, was they had a bonfire every night. So they had a bonfire where on the screen you would see a virtual fire going, a bonfire like we do at camp. And then they would have testimonials from staff and students about what Ryla meant to them. And so on Saturday night, the student participants had an opportunity to talk and talk about what they were feeling, how they felt when they started the experience, and their deep experience with Ryla itself. And I was startled. You probably have heard, any of you who work with youth have heard that this year has been really stressful for a lot of students. And one of the things that amazed me, and these are high performing students. These are students these are not students who are already identified as having challenges. These are high performing, good students who talked very deeply and personally about how difficult this year has been, how stressed they are, how anxious they are all the time, and how much Ryla had meant to them. So I felt really relieved as one part of it, but also just very touched that we had offered them this experience at this time in their lives. They needed it. they really needed it, and they are very grateful to us and to Rotary for giving them the opportunity. So I just want to tell you, if you are interested, Bridget Marquardt and Leader and you are offering students from our district the chance. If they are interested in July, there are 2 sessions. If you want to pay the $300 fee to sponsor a student, there is a possibility to do that if you have some students that you think might benefit from this. So contact me if you're interested, and I will get you the details about how to register, how the students would go online and apply, how to pay for that experience. But I think it may be something that students who could really benefit. This was really a remarkable experience. So let me. One more. I wanted to, oh, here we go. So I wanted to just remind you of who's on the District 5110 RILA Executive Committee. So I'm the chair and the camp director for RILA. Dale Gray is past district governor, and he is the past RILA chair and camp director. Diane Pomeroy, longtime involvement with RILA, actually since about 2008, Scott Valley Rotary. John Bowling for Applegate, Jacksonville Applegate. Arian Lyons from Coos Bay North Bend. Adrian Simmons from Ashland Lithia Springs, and Brenda Patton from Road Gateway. So that's your executive committee. Want to tell you. Okay, so RILA 2022, we already have traditional camp scheduled. So these are the dates. We are going back, we think, to our regular capacity, which is 144 high school sophomores. We're going to open it up to sophomores and juniors in 2022 to give them that experience. So generally for clubs, the recruitment of participants will start next February. Sponsorships are $600 per participant. That's for a full 6 days, 5 nights, plus transportation, all camp amenities, including all of the things we do for the leadership challenges. And meals and snacks and everything you can imagine that goes on at camp. We have a longtime partnership with a group called True North Consulting. We will be working with them again to bring you a revitalized and re-energized and probably updated curriculum and set of activities. I think it's going to be a great experience again, and we will probably incorporate some of the things we learned from eRILA. So if you personally have knowledge of any RILA alums who you think might be good staff members, we often start our younger team members as cabin counselors. And so if you know somebody who's mature and enthusiastic and would be a good young leader for RILA students, we'd like to hear from you. So feel free to share that information with you. Okay, so where are we? So what do you think, Rick? Should we talk about, deal with any questions about RILA, or should I go on to Interact?
You can go ahead. I do not see anything there. Somebody's asking for a copy of the slides, which we'll send out later. Okay.
So let's go to Interact then. Okay, so another program that I'm responsible for as your youth services chair is Interact. And these are service clubs for young people ages 12 to 18. And we also have an executive committee for Interact, and Debbie Snow from Eugene Southtown Rotary is our current district chair. She's amazing. She has done a wonderful job of energizing her own Interact Club at South Eugene High School. But with the Interact Committee, we also involve students. And so we do have a district Interact representative, Caitlin Booth, who's a student at Sheldon High School in Eugene. So they are technically co-chairs of our committee. Ruth Linos is our treasurer from Cottage Grove, and you can see the list of other members. We also have tried in recent years to engage and involve Rotaractors in some of these committees, and so Grace Petrina, who's at Oregon State Rotaract, is a member of the committee and a great contributor. So that's our committee. All right, so Interact Facts. Wait a minute. I think I skipped a slide here. There we go. So you may want to know how many clubs are technically active now. So in our district, we have 27 actively registered Interact clubs, and every single one of them is high school age. We don't have any middle school programs currently active, and all of them are school-based. In our district, normally we have Interact clubs pay a fee of $100 to offset some of the costs of the events that we provide to members and participants. We waived them this last or the current Rotary year, and we're planning to waive them the fee also in the coming Rotary year. We have enough money in reserves to cover what we expect to be our expenses, and then we'll charge a modest amount for activities. So, and every year, our District 5110 generously, provides funds to help offset the costs of a club training assembly. We do one focused on Interact and a district conference, which we hold in conjunction with the regular Rotary district conference. Okay, so many of you already know this, but school-based clubs, we have to have a faculty advisor at the school and at least one Rotarian advisor. But what we find, just based on years of experience, the most successful Interact clubs have 3 or more active Rotarian supporters, so that it's not left to just one Rotarian to keep things going. And there are real opportunities to, to be engaged with the students, to mentor them, to assist them with fundraisers and service projects, and to invite them to your Rotary Club to participate, particularly in active sorts of fundraising and service. We have found that interactors really enjoy, the hands-on things, distributing food at a food bank, helping clean up, a roadside, things like that, where they can be active and involved and actually have some time with Rotarians, learn about Rotary in an engaging way, again, avoiding the talking heads, some boring club meeting with a program that may or may not interest them. So Rotary International requires that Interact clubs always have at least 2 projects to keep their charters. They have to do one local or community service project and one international project. And in District 5110, we always have a district project that the students vote on, and they learn about the power of combining their fundraising to raise money for a worthy project somewhere in the world. But this year they chose, instead of doing an international project, they chose to support the district's fire relief effort. and their goal is to raise $7,000 and contribute it by the end of the Rotary year. And they're well on their way. So we don't require that all clubs participate in that effort, but they do so voluntarily, and it's kind of a powerful experience to see what they can do when they combine their efforts and their funds. So they've raised as much as $20,000 for international projects, and that's pretty darn exciting. Okay, so in the coming year, as I said, we have 27 clubs that are on the books, but very few Interact clubs have been active this year. And so we see the coming year as being a rebuilding and revitalization year. And currently all of the students who are on our executive committee are graduating seniors. So if you know of a student involved in Interact who would be a good contributor on the executive committee, please let me know, because we'd like some new energy and engagement from some different students, preferably those who are sophomores or juniors at this point. I'm going to look at our eRILA roster and see who some of the standouts were, and see if some of them might join us. So we're hoping to link up RILA participants and Interact. And one of the things we're doing with the eRILA alums now is we're going to do a series of virtual monthly meetups, so they have an opportunity to connect with each other, and we'll probably offer a short leadership lesson or activity that is interesting to them. And then we're also looking for ways to add value to participate at the district level. So one of the things we're looking at is travel opportunities, perhaps some kind of exchange program or inter-district exchanges, maybe some homestays where students from one area get to go meet folks from another part of the district, and possibly offer some Interact scholarships for people who demonstrate leadership. So again, we're probably going back to an in-person club training assembly. We usually do that in the fall. We'll try and figure out a date and time to do that. And we're going to focus on some of the things that they've said they're interested in. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is a big one for young folks. So we will probably focus, have some focus on that, bring in some interesting speakers and activities. Environmental issues and peace building have also been mentioned by the students as areas of interest. So that's Interact. And then for those of you who are fairly new to Interact or want updated information, current information about Interact, the Rotary International does have an Interact guide for club sponsors and advisors. It's really, really good. It's very comprehensive, and it has a lot of detailed information about how to start and run a club and keep it energized. Whoops. I'm trying. I don't have the manual dexterity to keep things perfect. Okay, so just one word about Rotaract. So technically, as I said, Rotaract is no longer part of youth services since the upper age limit for being involved in Rotaract it was eliminated. So, and they've done a number of things for Rotaract, including the fact that they can now be independent. They don't have to be sponsored by a Rotary Club. So they're moving toward full status in Rotary, which is interesting. But in our district, at least for the present, we've continued to include Rotaract with other programs for young adults because we really want to keep that link between Interact and RILA, Youth Exchange, and Rotaract. So currently we have 4 active Rotaract clubs in our district. University of Oregon is the biggest and probably the most active. Oregon State also has a good club. It's active and some really young leaders who are inspiring. Southern Oregon University has an active club, and then we have one that's kind of interesting. Evie knows about this one, the No Borders E Club. Well, I think we had the very first e-club in the Rotaract world, and they have members from all over the world. Their current president is from our district, and it's just a really interesting way to approach things. They are sponsored by our own Jefferson E-Club in District 5110. So Stephen Mast is their current president. So and then that last little paragraph, you can see who's involved with our Rotaract Executive Committee. Again, it's a shared responsibility. The district Rotaract representative is Alexi Overland, who's just graduating from University of Oregon soon, starting graduate school very soon, and will probably stay involved with Rotaract, but the DRRs serve for 1 year. So she will be ending her year on June 30th. And then her co-chair is Melissa Anderson from Ashland Rotary, and she's the advisor for SOU Rotaract. So we have a really good, energized group of young leaders as well as Rotarians working with us on Rotaract. So that's my presentation. So.
Excellent, Mary. So we did have 2 questions come in. Steve Mathis said, will the Interact District Training Assembly be at Cottage Grove Camp?
Tentatively, yes. We haven't reserved the facility yet, Steve. I need to, again, we have to figure out what we're allowed to do for an in-person meeting and find out if the camp itself has any limitations on such an event. So tentatively, that's our hope and our plan, but we're kind of watching and waiting. My plan is to be in contact with our partners at Grove Camp to see where they're at and whether they could accommodate us. That would be our choice.
Excellent. Second one was, Ebby said, I know there are 2 international Interact E-clubs started, but what about an E-Interact club in our district for those that are homeschooled or in small private schools?
I think that's a great idea, Evie. We haven't explored that, but I have always thought that there should be a club that offers opportunity for kind of an at-large, membership. Because, for example, Lakeview very consistently sends students to RILA, but they just don't have a critical mass of, their school isn't big enough to really have a viable Interact club. And so they're the ones that got me started about this, but I completely agree that we should try and explore that and see if that's a possibility, because I love that idea.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, there was Steve Wheeler says, since E-RILA was so successful, did you consider continuing it in the same E form?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Probably not the entire virtual program, but other districts are exploring the idea of what they're calling a hybrid program. So, for example, at the zone level, I'm working with the district down in Orange County, California, and they are going to a hybrid RILA where they're actually going to use some of the power that we get virtually to have, I think they're going to have 2 pre-camp sessions that are virtual. So they're going to start some of the personality exploration and some of the team building virtually. And then they're going to transport the students to camp. And so then they're going to do a traditional, I think, 3 days then at camp after the virtual introductions. And as I've said, there are some things about the virtual world that can be really powerful. These bonfires, we have campfire at camp, and I know we'll continue that, but the virtual bonfire, the chat function in Zoom is very powerful. And so when you're hearing these very personal testimonials, for one thing, you can hear and see the students really well. You can hear what they're saying. And then in the chat function, both the students and staff were overwhelmingly affirmative and going, you are great. I hope to be your best friend for life. You're amazing. Just the affirmations were wonderful. And it was clear that the students really needed and responded to that. So I can see, some of the power that we can get in this environment added to camp, not a replacement for in-person camp, but adding the power of both. So we'll see. But that's something for the executive committee to discuss and contribute, ideas. And we're going to work on our curriculum, work on bringing our RILA, the most current and best practices for our camp and making it a world-class leadership experience. Thank you for asking.
So Bill Trudeau says he likes the linking between the groups. Is Rotary Youth Exchange part of that linking? It's an important source of outbounds, host families, and future members.
Yes, it is. And Dan Converse is here with us, and maybe that's a good time for me to pass the baton to Dan. Would you like to respond to that, Dan?
Sure. I think we've always looked at the option of, going both directions with that. Our students that are going outbound, RILA is a great way for them to find out more about Rotary before they leave. They become better ambassadors when they do that. And then the students coming in too, Interact clubs are a good way for kids who need a little bit more of a nudge to get involved with their schools to participate. Clearly, Youth Exchange, as you all know, is suspended for this year. We're hoping for 22-23, and even that is still contingent on what happens with the variants. Pardon?
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, yes. And we're hopeful. And the critical thing is normally we interview students in December to go out in the fall of 22. And that's what we're still trying to determine should happen. It's a little ironic this year to have Holger Kanak as the international president, who has hosted multiple students, I believe at least 40. And
wow.
It's one of the strongest proponents of Youth Exchange out there, and then has presided over a year where we don't have Youth Exchange.
Yeah.
Also, Jennifer Jones, who is the 22-23 president, which is, I hope, will be the time that we can get students out again, is also a proponent of Youth Exchange. She tells an incredibly compelling story about a student that they had. And I think most of us have heard that, but it really talks about what happens with Youth Exchange. We're not a travel agency that sends kids to other places and bring kids in to look at the countryside. That's a piece of it, but the relationships that they develop during the time that they're here really is the critical piece. Typically, we have students who come in, we greet them in August. We spend a lot of time with them getting acquainted, sharing a lot of information. They get to sing their national anthem to us, even if there's only one student. So there's a little bit of stress that happens with that, but it's the kind of stress that builds bonds. But then they form a family that is just absolutely incredible. And it's far more about the relationships that form. They get the idea, or they get to understand that Oregon really is part of the United States. When they put on their application that they would like to go to the United States, that's New York, Hollywood, and Chicago, maybe Miami. Oregon, they have to look up on the map because they've never heard of it before. Then they realize that the whole state has fewer residents than the city that they live in. So they're definitely coming to a much more rural situation than they expected. But then they are blown away by the people who are here. by the experiences that they have, by a school system that is different from what they came from, probably not as academically rigorous, but still a lot more relationship with teachers and other things that happen with that, all ending in a year-end trip that is normally miraculous. And those of us that participate in that have a 2-year-old memory of one of the best groups of students that we've ever had, both inbound and outbound. I'll never forget being at the Coos Bay conference and being in a restaurant with all of our students and people asking me, who are these kids? Because they were such an amazing group of friendly, noisy, but not loud. I mean, it was just like, these were kids who were having an incredibly good time together. And there's a lot of pride, even though it's not me, it's them, that goes along with sharing with other people what this whole exchange is about. The main thing that we're dealing with right now is to develop an ongoing enthusiasm for the program. This is the second year of suspension. Even for those of us that are intimately involved with the program, there's an inertia factor. And some of it will be really re-engaging energy when it comes time and we get the green light. With Rotary International, they helped us through last year when we had to work on getting students home. We were reacting to a really serious crisis. And I think we handled it as successfully as it was possible to do. But what we're looking at right now is Rotary International looking at all the risks that are involved in this. Is this something that we want to do? Are we exposing our kids going out to the virus or a new variant and the students coming in? So I think there's a lot more caution than there has been. So that, I mean, we're optimistic, but we can't guarantee anything. So what we're looking at is developing ways to keep interest up. One of those is a district initiative that involves podcasts. And so what I would like to do is ask each of you to look through your experience, the memories that you have of students, some particularly kind of compelling stories about students that you had either that came in or went out. And we will be developing podcasts that may actually interview those kids directly, or the host families, or the people that have been involved with those students, to put that out to the district, put that out to just about everybody, saying this is what youth exchange is, and this is why it's so critical. But Charlie's on this feed today.
Yes.
Charlie is on he has a really cool story that is exactly what we're talking about with podcasts. So if he could share just briefly his story, then that'll give you an idea what we're looking for.
Charlie, you'll have to unmute yourself.
There we go.
There we go.
I learned this week that this story goes deeper in Rotary than I had remembered. 9 or 10 years ago, we hosted the Italian group study exchange team in our community. I'm a former GSE team leader, so I always try to pitch in on those. And I got the team scheduled to be in the language classes at Brookings Harbor High School that day. And one of the students, a sophomore at the time, who ran into the team was bit with the travel bug and the language bug. And he heard the Italians speaking many different languages that day, and he wanted more. He went to the counseling office to find my wife, who's an honorary Rotarian for her work in Rotary Youth Exchange, and ask, how do I bite into this? And her immediate reaction was, you go to RILA first. You're a sophomore. It's application time. You go to RILA first. And he went to RILA, and I came up in June to camp to tell students about Rotary Youth Exchange. And as I got out of the car, Zach was about 100 yards away in that big field at the camp, and he came barreling across the camp and stopped about 6 feet short and said, "Can I give you a hug? This is so fabulous." He came back from RILA and he signed up for Rotary Youth Exchange. He spent his senior year in Bolivia and had a successful exchange, some ups and downs like every year in a teenager. Came back and came to my office and told me that he was signing up for the military. Well, we talk about making peace warriors in Rotary Youth Exchange. And I was a little aghast for a moment. And he said, "Don't worry, this is my path to the diplomatic corps." Joined the Army, did 3 years and met a battalion commander in Italy. He was in the airborne division. And his platoon commander, pardon me, told him that he needed to apply for West Point Military Academy. He called and asked me for a letter of recommendation, and between the platoon leader and my letters, Zach got an unusual thing. He got a military appointment to West Point. And I promised him when he called me to say that he'd got in, I promised him that if he made it through, that I would go to graduation. So next week, my wife and I will be attending graduation ceremonies in place of his family. His family can't or won't be there, to see him graduate and put his second lieutenant bars on his lapel and his beret. And he told our club this week, I did a club visit, he and I both virtually, because I'm not in Brookings any longer, but we visited the club this week, and he told the club, "You didn't just change my life, you saved my life." I had forgotten that part of the story. Zach came out of a drug-infested family and was adopted by his aunt and uncle, who in turn left him behind, frankly. They were his parents only as the signers on the documents, only as they weren't family. He still sees them. He still supports them. He still finds his mother. But the Rotary spark from that group study exchange, from RILA, from our club project in Aspire, from Rotary Youth Exchange, from the folks he met in Rotary in Bolivia, all that changed his life. And so in October, when Zach is stationed at Fort Lewis up near Tacoma, he is already connected with a Rotary club there that he plans to volunteer in and join and continue giving back what he found in Rotary. It's a neat story, and it'll make a neat podcast. You guys all have those. If you've hosted a student, reach out to them and ask them to join your club meeting while we're still meeting virtually. It makes a wonderful, wonderful story.
Yeah, this does change lives. And there was a student, and I've been on the committee. We've hosted a couple of kids, but there's a particular student that we had 2 years ago who was, one of the most spectacular kids we've ever hosted. And some important things happened on the year-end trip, and I got to go to his goodbye doings just before he left. I gave him the final hug, and this is a kid who he changes everybody that he meets. So I said, you've changed my life, and his immediate comment to me was, "You've changed the course of my life." And those things, you don't get that very often, and when you do, it changes not only you, but the next time you're involved with a kid. I did see a question from Tony about if we do decide, or if we're given the green light to do exchange, will there be enough time to train kids? I would see the option of that being kind of telescoped, and we would probably have the same number of training sessions, but probably less time between those. And one of the things that we have found that some of these actually can work virtually, and there's certainly benefit in having inbound and outbound students, but this particular group of outbound students will be trained without the benefit of inbound students. So we'll be looking to our rebound students and our Rotaract students to provide some of that training. I think we're nearly out of time, but are there other questions that people would like to try to get an answer from?
I was wondering, Dan, could I tell a quick success story too that has inspired me and made my Rotary journey so meaningful? I was working with a student at North Medford High School who is one of these brilliant teenagers who was, he acted out a bit too. He was too smart for his own good sometimes. He went to RILA, learned about youth exchange. He was one of my favorite students ever, but he was kind of a wild child, long crazy hair and just delightful. So he was sent to Switzerland, and quite honestly, we were a little worried that he was going to Switzerland, which is a pretty regimented society, and you gotta kind of knuckle down. So he went on his exchange year, and when he came back, I was walking down the street in Medford, and this young man started waving at me and calling my name, and I turned around. I didn't recognize him. He looked completely different. His hair was short and trimmed, and he just carried himself differently. He's now a second-year student at Yale Medical School.
Wow.
And that's 10 years out. He did a couple of things between then and
Yes,
now.
he did.
Yes. We got to get you to that graduation, Mary.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that. Yeah.
So are there other, any questions or comments before we wrap up?
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest and support of our young leaders. They're the future of the world. They're the future of Rotary. And it's very important. And I think, as Dan and Charlie would agree, being associated with these programs is, it brings so much to us too. It's changed my life. So I know some folks in our generation are a little afraid of teenagers maybe, but it is such a rewarding experience. So I would encourage you to try and get involved at the club level and then at the district level, and meet and work with and mentor and empower these young leaders. So thank you, Rick, for allowing us time today, and thank you all for your time on a Saturday. Appreciate it.
Very true. Thank you.
Thank you.